Oh yeah, and Frank. So what was the question you had?
Since we were talking about art and stuff, my interesting question was, how do you guys feel about AI art? Because I'm curious about this because I'm not an artist. So again, I want to hire artists because I want to hire people in the community. But on the other hand, if I learn the prompts right, if I wanted to make something very new, could I do it with AI? But would I want to do with AI? Because then I'm not really hiring someone. You know what I mean? So there's an up and down. Do we use it as like a helper? Do you not use it at all because you know people in the community? You know what I mean? It's kind of an interesting question.
My specific thought on that is that I think that there's a lot of great creators that are absolutely terrible at describing what it is they see in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got infinite money, sure, you can hire 15 different concept artists to draw up the thing that you describe, and hopefully one of them gets that thing. Mm-hmm. The thing that I think that AI art will be good for is for that right there, where you're like, okay, can you make me a panda riding a horse with a spear and a Lakers jersey, right? Like something like that, like where it's like a random thing. And then it gives you a couple images and you're like, this one. And then you take that and you give that to an artist. You're like, this is what I want.
That's perfect idea.
That's how I see it. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's how I see it. Other than that, it's like, I'm sure like 10 years from now, they're going to have some crazy program that you'll be able to print out a whole comic. But for right now, I think that's, it's still going to be a little while before it can do it to that level of degree. Plus, there's certain things where like, even if it could do it perfectly, sometimes, and this from watching anime, mm-hmm. there are even Shibis, for example, like that super hyper animated, like big head, small body. Yeah. Obviously, that doesn't look like the character from the previous screen, but that's done on purpose. It's done in a way that like it actually pulls you in, and that's something they do really well in anime, where like an arm might be slightly longer in one scene than another. And it's to show something, right? It's not like, not because they have stretching powers or something, but it's like, maybe it's like how fast they were moving and it's an illusion, things like that. And I feel like AI art's going to take a while to figure that part out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that artists, it's one of those things where it's like, it's already there. It already exists. You can't get rid of it. So do you let other people use it and create their works faster, or do you use it to help your artist understand you better? That's how I see it.
That's
I know Todd. I know Todd's an artist. That's why I'm definitely.
Yeah, I see it's a good way too. But go ahead.
Yeah. I'm kind of touting that line on both sides, where I can see use case for it, but there's a huge problem if it's inadvertently stealing from other artists. And that's where my biggest issue is what I've read on it, what I've seen on it. Have I used it? Sure. But is it, if it's, really taking all these algorithms from, any creator out there, even if it's a writer, right? And AI is using AI, Chat GPT, if it's writing a script that someone else wrote and it's taking part of that without credit, as an artist, you're kind of like, wait a minute, that's really crappy. That's something where if that element can be fixed, where if there's some sort of royalty system or something put in place, or credit system where it's like, hey, we took these 10 images from these 10 artists and compiled it for you. Okay.
I actually have like a complete, this is something where like, if I had infinite money, I would build this myself. The first one is a system that solely sources royalty-free images. I think that would be the first step.
Yep.
And the second step, and you'd have to pay to get this part, it would be the ability to pull from a collection of images that have been built or that have been linked to an NFT so that it's traceable, right? Mm-hmm. And then automatically, like if it pulls from these 10 images, 10% of your image to build this image, whatever I'm paying monthly goes towards the creation of these images, and anybody who owns those NFT automatically deposit in their bank account. And the reason why I love that idea is that's what PROs in the music industry do, right?
Yes.
Not exactly like that, but the whole idea is they've got these systems that scan the world. Like there was a bar here in Nashville that got closed down because they were running a Spotify channel, a personal Spotify channel, and they weren't paying for the rights to play it in their bar. That's like buying Netflix and opening a movie theater. You can't do that, right?
Yeah.
So the whole idea is that
that's a great idea.
Yeah, like they already have systems for this in the music industry.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would love to see that happen. But again, yeah, like if I have the resources, I'd build it already. But I think that the royalty-free image one, there might actually be somebody working on that. Because like then that makes perfect sense. Like if everything's royalty-free and you're just melding them together, then no one's getting hurt in that. And I think if you do it that way, it's like, it's the same as like taking a shovel, painting it gold. You can sell it now, like it's yours, right? So you can still sell it. But the other version where like if it's pulling from other art and then you sell it, I don't mind it for the concept art of giving it to an artist. Like, hey, here's a general look I'm looking for, because like that's like me going on Google and making a mood board. I don't own any of those images, right? Yeah. So if I have AI art make a melded mood board to give to an artist, I don't see it as a problem. But if I then sold that art, that's when it becomes a problem.
Well, and that's a good point. Is that's the other side of the coin for me is, somehow setting it up like you talked about, where whether it's free, royalty free, or paid artists, the people you're using the art, there has to be some sort of system in place. But the other side of it is what I've used it for. I actually used it for a cover for the first book that I signed with Dark Space Studios was Rona Chronicles, and I used 3 AI images that I composited together, and then I painted on top of those 3 images all the different various things that I needed, light sources, things like that. So it had this concept art feel, but I used it as a foundation, and I was using bits and parts of different pieces. So, that's what concept art is, basically. I'm using these 10 different images of a mountain, of a knight, of a horse, of a tent, of a sky, and I'm putting it all together, and you have no idea when I'm done, it looks nothing like kind of what I started with. And that's how I ended up using it, because I felt a little dirty. I'm like, wait a minute, like I'm using AI art, but I need to make it my own. And that's, as an artist, I went to art school, I went to, I had my degree in art and small business. I'm like, I feel like shady using it and not giving these people due credit, So I'm kind of on both sides, but I'd love to have something in place to make sure artists are paid.
Yeah. For Mittens, I actually had a thing in my head, but I didn't know what to say and how to describe it. And it's just a highway going to a city, and it's for issue 2 of Mittens. But I got this from Midjourney, and I just typed in highway going to a city. And then I'm like, you can take that, but don't copy it, obviously, and then just make it your own. And then
I was gonna say that's Greg's exactly the example. Like there's times where he tries to explain something to our artist and it's not getting through, and typically he has to explain it to me, and then I can explain it better to the artist, right? And it's like that's who it's for. It's for the creators who they've got amazing ideas, they've got stuff in their head, they just can't draw, and so it's got to be. I think it's a freeing thing for people who are creative but don't have the technical skill to showcase that creativity. It's such a to me, the other thing too is one of those things where so I'll give free marketing advice, even though I literally get paid as a marketing consultant, right? So why do I do that? It's if this person was going to pay me, they're going to pay me. If they're not, they're not, right? There's plenty of people where I've given them free stuff and they're like, how much do I owe you? It's like, oh, that person wants to pay me. And other people, they're like, cool, thanks. Later, they would have gotten that. They would have got it from somewhere, right? They would have done something to get it. And I think that if you get somebody who uses AI art to then go and get artists, they were going to get the artist. This just made that faster. So that's why I say for artists, if you want to avoid people stealing art, the best way to do it is I was saying, if anything, as an artist, promote the use only to get the initial thoughts out of your head. So tell people how to use it right, as opposed to all the people who are don't use it, run away from it, it's bad, it's stealing art. It's but someone's going to do it. So if they're going to do it, why not teach that? You know what I mean? It's if someone's got a sword, don't tell them to throw away the sword, show them how to use it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole idea. It's it's already there. I guess you can throw it out. Someone can just make another sword, right?
And it's a tool.
I've played around with AI art a little bit, and you have to get the prompts right to actually know exactly what you want. Yeah. And again, I've only played. I don't have time to learn every single prompt to make a prompt this long to make it perfectly what I want. So
it's called prompt engineering. That's a whole thing where that's going to be a skill on resumes in the future. Prompt correctly, because like for me, like I use ChatGPT all the time for stuff. So like it's, you know, but it's such a great tool for idea generation and brainstorming.
Yeah.
So with the artwork, it's like I want something scary, and then you see a bunch of stuff. You're like, oh yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at. All right, like let's take that and make it look like this. Let's do it again, right? And like I think Midjourney does that, where like it'll make a couple of them, and then you can tell it like, okay, take this one and make it more variation.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, infinite money, sure. I'd hire concept artists for days. But the point is, if I can't, like, I really would. Like, I love concept art. Like, I'm that guy who, when I played Mortal Kombat, I would try to unlock the whole crypt and read all the descriptions of all these artwork that they'd hide in different. I'm like, man, that looks awesome. I'm like, why didn't they do that version of Scorpion? That looks dope. Like, I love learning about all of that concept art. I love when people put it at the end of their comics. Like, it's such a cool idea. But the point is, like, if I can't afford it, it's not going to happen anyways. But if I can get this design and get it into the hands of an artist, and I can make my comic created faster, and then I can earn money with that comic, I can then eventually, hopefully, hire more concept artists.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of that's how I see it. I see it like as a thing that will, like, it's like the internet allowing you to connect with more people. Yes, you can knock door to door, or you go into a Facebook group and message 3,000 people at once.
Right.
It's like it's a tool to speed up the things you already wanted to do. Right. I could go to art school for 4 years. I could take 700 hours of drawing courses just to draw a single piece of concept art to then give to my artist. But now I'm an artist and I don't need to hire one. So I see it.
Yeah.
So I used when I made that highway thing, I also did a couple other things on Midjourney, like whenever that came out, like 2 years ago or whatever. Because I was like, oh, it was kind of cool. And I had this idea in my head, and this is going to be like way later on in our story, but I needed a sword, but I needed to like describe what the sword looked like. And the first two were not at all what I wanted. And
what the hell is that second one on the top right?
Yeah, I don't even know.
Diamond. It looks like if a kid tried to make the diamond pickaxe from Minecraft.
Yeah.
Like with tools they found around their house.
So the closest to that, what I wanted is the third image, the one that's the bottom left, and that's like what I'm going to use as a concept art for like when we get to that story. That sword.
I mean, it's a tool. It's just got to be used responsibly, and there's got to be parameters set in place with any tool. Like drawing tablets when they first came out, people were, it was a whole different thing. When Photoshop first came out, I remember it was just like, oh, this is terrible. And,
when the internet first came out.
Yeah, exactly.
With all
TV's going to take away TV.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's TikTok now.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, we got off tangent here for a while. You were asking a bunch of questions. So.
Yeah.
No,
you really got off track.
But it is cool because like we've chatted about AI on a couple episodes now, and it's just like, I feel like for everybody who didn't get a Facebook account until like 8 years after everyone got one, like people need to realize technology is going to move forward irrelevant of their field.
Exactly.
If you find out that ChatGPT had 5 million, or was it 1 million users in only 5 days, like you have to understand that this is definitely not going to go away. And it's like if you don't figure out how to direct people using it the way that you think it should be used, it's going to be used however anybody figures it out. And that's why I say it's like, it's better to learn it yourself and then teach others how to use it. Like for me, ChatGPT, I use it for a lot of business stuff, and I'm teaching my clients how to use it. And I tell them, I'm like, don't do it this way, because this way, like that's going to look like a robot wrote it. You could use this though as a basis for your ideas and then research this stuff. Yeah. Right? Like don't just blanketly use this stuff. Like, sure, if you want to just create a blog channel and you're just trying to throw garbage out there, might as well just, use it because you wouldn't have done it anyways. But if you're trying to create valuable things, like I created a 36-page ebook using ChatGPT because I have an entire marketing strategy I use. I know what it is, but I don't have the time to write out a 36-page book. So what I did was I go to ChatGPT and I go, here's my marketing strategy. Here's an outline. Please just describe each of these steps. I gave it the steps, and then it just wrote the description. It's like the description's on the internet. Anyone can write those descriptions, but now I've gathered it in one place. So like I then teach others to do it that way. It's like if you know this information, you can get the right information, have it type it out for you like an assistant would. You can pay. And there's a paid version of it, so you're technically paying somebody, right? Like so, like the whole idea is like it's it's a tool. Learn how to use it, and if you think that others are going to abuse it, teach others how to use it better. Again, like the sword, it's already there, it's on the table. Don't just let it sit there. Show people how it's supposed to be used.
So when AI takes over and you go missing, Dylan, we'll know why. You were like an early adopter.
Yeah,
I'm just taking over.
Yeah,
I am the AI.
It's not Chat GBT. It's called Chaos GBT, and actually somebody did use it to literally ask like, "What's like the end of the world?" And it's like a nuclear like.
Oh yeah,
warhead.
That's lazy. That's not going to be a nuclear warhead. It's going to be a bunch of people that press buttons and EMP the whole continent.
And describe like what would happen and like basically like a complete apocalypse of the entire world.
Yeah, it'll be a big dumpster fire.
Yeah, dumpster fire.
All right. So, what is your favorite aspect of being a comic book creator?
I would say. Kind of all of it. I mean, even though it's stressful, it's financially a thing. You have to pay people. You have to do shows. You guys know, like, setting up for shows and the stress and everything that goes along with being a creator, having proofs of your book and merchandise, doing Kickstarters, setting all that up, all the art, all the creative side behind that. It's just, I enjoy all of it, no matter the good and the bad. Like I did my first show behind the table maybe 6-7 years ago at a local show out by Seattle. And, all I had was like a 6-page black and white preview issue of Ice Pick. And I think I sold like 20 copies maybe at that show. And I'm like, whoa, this is like a crappy ash can 6-page preview, and 15-20 people came up, loved it. I ended up doing some commissions that show, and I was like, this is like a thing. I mean, I just never thought that people would enjoy what I produce selfishly, right? I mean, I do fan art for myself because I love characters, and I created Ice Pick when I was a teenager, and that was because of my love of comics and storytelling and superheroes and stuff. So just everything. I mean, I enjoy everything of it.
Now, for me, I enjoy writing and telling a good story and creating the characters and stuff. Since I'm not a good artist, I try and figure out exactly what to put into the story and stuff. But I have this whole thing for Takana all outlined. And like with the Taming of April, same thing. I love the idea of writing and love the idea of storytelling. That's, to me, is my favorite aspect of being a comic book creator or a writer in general. I'm working on another book, more of a novel, obviously. But I'm working on another book, and it's about a guy who is kind of divorced, and he's living on his own, and he's a writer, but nobody really reads his stories. And then he meets this girl, and it's like, oh, well, I like your story. So you're reading all these different stories, and these 3 stories have something to do with his life. So I love the idea of storytelling and the idea of surprises and that kind of stuff. So that's my thing. I love telling stories.
I like the world building stuff. Like when I was thinking about because Todd, I definitely agree. Like there's so much stuff that's interesting throughout the whole journey, especially because we just did our first tabling of the show, and it's like I think there's like a bunch of milestones I really like. It's like that. The first one's like when you get like this aha moment of something in your world where like, I could do this. Like, oh wait, but if I did it like this, then this could happen, and this could, like that chain of events that happens. Like that first spark feels great. That first piece of artwork that's finished for that scene that you knew was going to look cool, and then it looks even cooler. And then the next step is when it gets colored and it's even cooler. And then when it's physically printed and you're holding it and it's even cooler. And it's like, I think each of those steps, and then definitely being able to like, I think what the last thing would be like when somebody finds out you make comics and they're like, what? And they're like, oh yeah, 1 second, I got a comic. And they're like, wait, you print them? And it's like, it's kind of like, it's like, no, I don't just like make comics, like they're actual comics. So I think each of those little steps are so awesome.
and for me, it's like really addicting. Like it's almost a drug, loosely, when you table a show and you have fans come up to you and you're like, okay, this is awesome. Like, this is a great feeling, right? And then you're like, screw it. I'll do that same show because, it was fun, right? So you do it out of fun and you go back and you have the same fans come back and say, hey, what do you got? What's new? And you're like, okay, this is kind of a thing. And there is a lot of those milestones. And I'm curious, Frank, when you're talking about writing and story building, I get a lot of inspiration as a writer from film and entertainment, TV shows and film. I actually, when I was in college, I worked on a few short films. One of them I was kind of an art director for a documentary, but that really got me into just a whole different perspective of writing comics. Because I went to college after obviously after high school and all that stuff. But after reading so many comics, and then you start to get the behind the scenes of films and stuff, I write scripts very film kind of oriented.
Like a screenplay.
Almost. It's like a far shot, medium shot, close up. I put that specifically in my script to help the artist kind of convey, like, where are we in the scripting, or the art? Where does it need to be? Where do the characters need to be? And I'm just kind of curious as another writer, is it just, you just give a description for the page, or is it kind of panel by panel description?
The way I do it, I write it, like I said, I started off writing screenplays in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And I've written like 4 different screenplays, never sold anything yet. But then I started writing books, novels, and then I switched to comic books. And wait a minute, comics are kind of like a screenplay. It's like, I usually put like page 1, panel 1, blah, 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 blah. Then panel 2, blah, 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 blah. This person says this. And the first comic, there's a lot, you can see there's a lot of different panels on this one. But as I progress with other comics, I spread apart the panels a little bit so you can see things better and stuff. And I found that better. You can't, 6 panels in 1 page is like a lot. Usually between 4 and 5, I think 5 is probably the good one. And with the new one that I have coming out, the number 7, there's actually 1 page where there's 1 panel and it's like she's totally shocked. That's one other thing I've learned about writing comics. It's like the less panels, the more dramatic the scene is. Yeah.
That's interesting. I love splash pages. I love my books are littered with 2-page splash pages. They're kind of a pain to get printed because you got to make sure they line up. But if they get printed right. But I do the same thing. I feel like there's times where you can have 7, 8, 9 panels, maybe, if depending on what's going on. But I try to minimize my writing so that it's more the storytelling, like the panels flow panel to panel, page to page. And it's like, here's an action sequence. Okay, boom, that was an impact. Now we go back to some storytelling. You know what I mean? Like I try to keep it pretty tight, pretty concise. I don't overwrite, I guess, a book.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's definitely something that we've had to work on. Like Greg wrote most of these comics into a novel at first, essentially. Like it's just a story, and then coincidentally he also moved it into like storyboards first. But the difference between storyboards and paneling is that storyboards can have multiple action sequences within a single storyboard, but a panel can't. Like that's a unique thing with comics, is that you can't show one character doing multiple actions, or at least definitely not more than 2 actions at a time in a single panel, unless it's something like, maybe it's like a Flash character, right? A speedster, and they're doing multiple things at once, but then that's different. But you were talking about having the page spread. This is actually a 2-page splash page, essentially, where we paneled on the outsides of
that's different. I like that.
Yeah, and then this one here is actually without the writing on it, but on the wall there's going to be an ancient language written in blood that we put on there after the fact. But basically, like there's tons of creative ways to do it. Like splash pages are fun, and I like what you're saying. Like the less panels, the more what's it called, dramatic. I do agree with that, but it's also just like what you're trying to pull someone's attention towards, right? Like you can make panel sizes bigger. You can do panoramics. You can do tall ones. You can do overlapping ones. Like I think my favorites are when the panels go right to the edge of the comic and then the panels lay on top of it. Kind of like that last one we showed, but like it just in general, like whenever it bleeds into a corner, like overlaps the edge of a panel to like come out at you, like it is kind of funny. It's like there's the square block ones, and then slowly you can progress out of that and make it a little more chaotic. And actually, one of our favorite panels or pages is the our ink issue 1, where like the edges of the each of the boxes are completely warped because it's a nightmare scene. Like he's having a dream and something crazy's happening. So there is no straight lines. It's all erratic lines that are boxing in each of these panels. So like you can be so creative with that. It's really fun.
I learned the big splash pages, as you call it, by reading The Death of Superman back in the early 2000s. I mean, early 90s. When when he was fighting that one Doomsday, it was one page.
Yep. And that's what the 90s did. Like I started reading late 80s and then kind of was there with the Image boom. And so I got to see a lot of those guys from Image, what they were doing, all their Marvel stuff. And if you look at what they did when they were doing Spider-Man, X-Men, X-Force, those types of stuff, it was very, very different than what they did with their Image creator stories. The panels were explosive. They were more in your face. They were more creative. The story writing was definitely different. The action was like cranked up to 11, where I just felt like the chains were kind of taken off and they could do whatever they wanted. And if you look at like how DC and Marvel, they've adapted some of that over the years, but back then it was like, there's very structured ways to make a comic book and panel layouts and stuff. And like Image just broke down those doors, and said, no, we can do whatever we want. Like, have fun with it, right? It's comics.
Yeah.
So even though the episode is about you guys, I have a couple favorite things of being a comic book creator. Because we did our first ever like table.
Yeah.
That was awesome. It was like slow in the beginning because like everybody was like getting set up to do their D&D thing. Then they started like coming over to just look at like what we got going on. Yeah. I sat down while Dylan just like set up the table because he's a marketer, so he knows like what to put where. And I'm just like, what if I put this here? He's like, no, you just sit there, eat the brownie, and I'll just... So I was just sitting there. And then like one of the best things so far that's happened in the almost 6 years of doing this is the first sale that we ever got at a convention. Yeah. So that was awesome. And we took a picture of like without showing their card info or anything. And I was like, that's like one of the coolest things ever. Even though like Kickstarter was the first time we made money on something, I thought actually getting a sale like in person was cool. Yeah. And the last person to buy something that day, she wasn't even part of the convention. She lived upstairs. And like how things like formed was just very weird. It was like just a small world. So there was this job that I was applying to and had 3 different interviews at. Didn't get the job, but whatever. And she actually works at that place, but I did not know that. I learned that the next day. What she did was she came over to the table and she was just looking at all the comics that we had. She picked up Mittens and she's like, I've never read a comic book before. And I was like, oh, today's the day.
Yeah.
And I was like, you like cats? And she's like, I just got a cat. I was like, that's
done.
Weird. And she's like, I named it ZD. And I was like, that's even weirder. So she picked up Mittens and was like looking through it. And then she didn't realize like we actually like made them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she's like, oh, you guys like collect these? And I was like, no, we like make them. And she's like, oh, like who wrote them? And then Dylan's like, well, he like writes like all of them, and then I edit them to make them better and stuff. And she's like, oh, can you sign it? And I was like, yeah, that's cool. So I had to do that, and I signed a magnet, which was also weird. So that was like some of the coolest things that's happened so far. But,
I kind of relate a little bit because see, when I was working in radio and we had this big giveaway of some sort, there was a couple of people there who wanted me to. I was like, I feel like a movie star here or something. It's like, but then that transferred over into doing the comic book stuff at Comic Cons. Yeah. It's like, hey, can you sign them up? Oh yeah, of course. I'm kind of used to it. I mean, I'm nowhere near a celebrity or nothing, but it's like when somebody asks me to sign something, oh yeah, sure, no problem. So yeah. It's a good feeling when somebody wants you to sign and want to take. Oh yeah, take a picture. Somebody wanted to know if I had a picture of me, just to so they can hang in a room or something. I met this guy. I'm not a celebrity or nothing, but okay.
That's weird.
That's
the weirdest question I've ever had so far. It's like, do you have a picture of you? No, not really, but sorry.
You gotta get one of those cool headshots.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an experience doing shows, and it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of stress. It's a financial investment, whether you break even, make money, lose money, wherever you stand. But it's fun. I mean, just to have people like what you do, and there's the criticizers out there and all those kind of people, trolls and all that, but it's still a lot of fun, and at the end of the day, that's why I do it.
I especially like I said, the last Comic-Con I went to in Cleveland, how I had my comics, and of course I had this other thing for adults. I'm noticing now, the more stuff or more different things you have on your table, the better it is, because now you're not just one trick pony. Like, I have the comics in this rack. It's like a middle rack, and it's like a magazine rack, and it's like all the comics and the books and everything else are there. And the Taming of April is over here. So it's like it's separate from everything else. But it was just interesting to notice that they wanted the kids would look at that and the adults would look over here. So it's good to have more than just one thing on your table. So
that was the big thing we did with ours. Like, I made sure, like Greg was saying, I set up the whole table. I was like, no, we need to, we have a lot of stuff. Let's make them realize how much stuff there really is.
Yeah.
And so we laid it out pretty. Actually, Greg, pull it up again real quick. Just because they weren't on to see it earlier. But we I laid it out. So there it is. So you can see we had all our comics laid out. You can see comics behind us and be in front of us. We've got prints. We've got our shirt. We got magnets and stickers. And we set this thing up so that it was all over the place. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. It really is. As an artist, I mean, I have portfolios of fan art. Obviously, I do that, and I sell prints. Kind of on the fence about that as well, but as an artist, they sell, people love fan art, so that's a good part of it. But I also have all the original art for Ice Pick that I sell. And speaking of experiences, the last show I did of last year, which was in Tacoma, Washington, a little bit south of Seattle, I had a guy come up and buy 2 original art covers for Ice Pick, and I'm like, that was the first time I sold original art of my original character at a show, and it's 5 years in. And I mean, milestones that was a really, really cool milestone, to have someone like your original character that much that they're buying the original art, so
that's awesome.
It's a little different as an artist, right? As a writer, it's one kind of experience. As an artist, it's different.
Exactly.
Because I do kind of it all.
I also think it's probably more profitable for an artist to go to a show than a writer, because they can sell art, they can draw something there.
Yeah, you're totally right, Frank. I mean, that's what my wife said. When I started doing Ice Pick and doing stuff, and I did some indie coloring work before I even did Ice Pick, and we'd go to shows. I mean, she's a comic fan too, and it's no one cares about the colorist. You're not bringing in a crowd if you're a digital colorist for these indie books, right? You're not going to sell a lot. She's like, now the artists, that's where it's at. And she's like, I know you're a good artist. You should do that and do a table. And you're right. As an artist, you have a little bit more kind of interaction, a little bit more people come up because you're creating that art, right? It's weird. It's a weird thing.
Okay, next question.
Who are your role models or inspirations, and how have they influenced your work?
By all means, Frank.
Oh. Well, I guess it depends on what I'm. Because see, I can't really think of it on top of my head, because see, I love to write, and I've read things by Stephen King, but that's not really my genre. I love watching animation stuff, and cartoons and stuff like that. When you're talking like, okay, movie stuff, oh man, it's like on the top of my head, I know not Jack Black. I can't think of his name, but he's a director and he writes stuff. And anyway,
what's something he created?
Oh, I'm having complete brain fart. I don't know the guy's name. I'm trying to think of the guy's name.
Comedy, drama.
Well, he made movies, but he's a director. He originally had a heart attack. I forgot his name.
Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, I couldn't think of the guy's name. I adore the guy because he seems like an average Joe, just making movies. Now, obviously, I don't make movies. I make stuff, but I mean, he's also a writer too.
Yeah.
And there's some other people that. There's a guy on TikTok that he's a blind voice actor, but even though he's blind, and I only have one eye, but he inspires me because he goes surfing, he goes skateboarding, he does everything, even though he's blind. His name is God, I can't forget his name now. But he's known as the blind surfer, and he's in California, and he does a lot.
That's a very specific thing, yeah.
But he's the voice of Fox News tonight on Fox News, and he does all sorts of other stuff too. But he's inspiration to me because he does a lot of stuff, even though he's blind, and he's not totally dark blind. I mean, but he says his vision is all blurry, and he's legally blind, but he's blind.
Yeah.
But he does so much stuff, even though he's blind, and he does it anyway. Matter of fact, he tells the story of when he was a little younger. People kept, don't tell anybody you're blind, that you're a voice actor. Don't tell anybody you're blind. It's like, well, he got over that eventually because people are inspired by him now.
Yeah.
Because he does all this voice acting stuff. He has like 1 million followers on YouTube, and he does all this great stuff, even though he's blind. So and he's awesome. He's kind of an inspiration to me. Even like, again, it's not comic stuff, but as a voice actor, he's an inspiration to me. And hey, if he can do it, I know I can. But yeah, Dan Povenmire too is another one that I really enjoy to talk about because he created Phineas and Ferb. He created all these different things on Disney. Again, he's not a comic artist, but he's a guy who creates something for Disney, and he doesn't seem like like a jerk guy. He seems his TikTok videos seem genuine. So yeah, he's another guy who's kind of what's that?
Down to earth, yeah.
Yeah, real down to earth type of guy. Yeah, exactly. And he's, like I say, created Phineas and Ferb. And matter of fact, when he announced there were more episodes of Phineas and Ferb coming, I made a little TikTok video, and he used he used a bunch of other people too, but he used my video in his, like, hey, people are reacting to it. This is awesome. So that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, for me, it's because of the era I grew up in. I'm going to name drop like all the greats, right? I mean, Jim Lee, McFarlane, even later on, Rob Liefeld, Stephen Platt, Mark Silvestri, all those guys, early Image 90 guys, were a huge influence because, I mean, they bucked the system. They kind of was like, hey, we're corporate, we're working for big companies, but we're going to do our own thing. And, I was in high school at the time, so, I was like, why don't I do my own thing? And that's really where the whole idea for creating Ice Pick kind of blossomed, was from those guys showing people, average people, that you can still enjoy what you do what you want to do, and you don't have to work for like big corporate America type of stuff. But for art, I'd say my biggest influence is probably Todd McFarlane. He's a fellow lefty, and me and my wife met him, and I've seen him on videos and stuff, obviously, but a few years ago we met him at Emerald City, and he is just one of the coolest, down to earth, like, I mean, he's just that unique kind of guy. And, I don't feel that there's an ego there. There's a very humble appreciation of his fans. And, Jim Lee's another guy. I got to meet him, and again, very humble, very no ego, right? Like, I'm the greatest artist ever, but that's okay, because, I'm going to take the time to meet you and shake your hand and sign your books and, just take a few minutes and chat with you. And to me, like, not only is it like an artistic or maybe a creative inspiration, but it's a person inspiration. Like, I want to be that kind of creator. I want to be that creator where people can feel comfortable coming up to me at my booth. And I've spent time, talking with people, not just comics, but whatever, whatever on their mind. And I think that makes the experience that much better, when you're able to just have those kind of natural, not necessarily what's your character, what are you selling me, but it's those other conversations where you start building kind of friendships and relationships. So yeah, I mean, all the early 90s image guys, they were a huge influence.
When I go to cons, I often encourage people to talk about like animation and cartoons and stuff. Yeah. And so we have a conversation about anime or My Hero Academia or the Owl House or Amphibia or something. And they're like, well, what is this stuff, by the way? Well, if you want to know, I'll tell you. So it's good to cover conversations with people about different things. And when they see Turkana, or that kind of reminds me of Kim Possible. Yeah, I'm a fan of Kim Possible. That's why her lip looks like that a little bit. So you kind of connect it to what you're creating. But yeah, a lot of times just having conversations with people is exactly what people get to know you for. So
right, yeah,
that's cool.
Nice.
What can fans look forward to from you in the future?
Well, more books, more stories. I can say Annabelle is launching Saturday. It's my next Kickstarter. We can throw out, I'll send you guys links or whatever. But, it is real quick, the idea behind Annabelle is it's part of the trilogy where Ice Pick was part 1, and that was his story. And his genre is the 90s superhero book. Annabelle is more femme fatale, strong female character. It's a little bit different genre. It kind of relates to a different crowd, and yet it still has all the characters in it from Ice Pick. There's the 3 main characters, Ice Pick, Annabelle, and their friend Luke. And, that is her story. These 4 issues are going to be her story, and, where she got her powers, how she got stuff, history, stuff like that. Next year, I already have issue 1 written of Luke, and that's going to be a 4-issue miniseries of his story. And again, it's going to be a horror book. It's a different genre, but it's going to include the cast, right? It's the Ice Pick gang is what I like to say. It's the 3 main characters that, I'm telling each of their own stories. And after that, actually, I'm going to start transitioning into one-shots for all of my stories, because I feel like that's kind of a nice compact way. Here's one book, it's 40, 60, 80 pages, whatever, and it tells a complete story. And I think a lot of people like graphic novels and one shots, and that again is going to have those 3 main characters in it, and it's just about them fighting supernatural characters and creatures and mayhem, all kinds of fun stuff. So more stories, that's what I'm doing. More art, more stories, more shows.
Yeah,
more merch.
Well, as for me, I'm obviously running a Kickstarter for comic number 7. I'm hoping it gets funded because technically the comic is done. It's lettered, it's print, colored, and everything. I just don't have the money to print it off. Yeah. So that's what the Kickstarter is for. So crossing my fingers, it's like it gets funded because then it can get printed off and taken to cons and stuff. Because if it doesn't get printed off, I just might make it a free comic online on the website or something. I don't know. But I really want to take this to at least the 10th comic and then kind of hold off on that. But obviously I have this other book called The Taming of April. I'm hoping people will, like that as well. But again, that's a totally different genre, totally different thing. It's romantic comedy. This is a superhero thing. I mentioned a few minutes ago about this book that I'm working on called Kim Sweet, basically about a writer who meets somebody and is like, oh, I like your stories. And these 3 different stories. So I'm kind of still working on that. But of course, it's a novel. It's more of a thriller novel. And I have these ideas for other stories. But again, I love to write. I love to create stories. But a lot of times when I get an idea, I'll just write down the outline first. Mm-hmm. And it's okay, I'll get to that in a second. I got to finish this first in the story. So yeah, right now my main concern is, making the Kickstarter work. That's my main thing. But after that, then I'll start other things.
Yeah.
But I have other things
are a lot of work. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah.
Kickstarters are a lot.
Yeah. It's a matter of getting people's attention to it. That's the whole thing. And you hope people will share it. You hope people will fund it. You hope people will, pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bug people about it, but it's like I try to maybe talk about it like once a day. You don't want to keep saying, "Oh, by the way, look! Oh, by the way, look! Oh, by the way, look! There's a Kickstarter right here." You know, you'll bug people about it if you talk about it too much. So
nice.
Yeah. Cool. So now we have this other like behind the scenes section on our platform. We have a thing called Nova Nation. Todd's like kind of into the whole platform stuff going on. He's got his own stuff going on. Frank, you are part of our creators group on Facebook, but for some reason we don't have your stuff on the platform. I don't know if like we are going to do that, so we'll figure that out if you want that on there. But yeah, so we have 2 questions for Nova Nation, and anyone that actually is a member for that, they'll be able to see this part of the podcast.
Before we get to that too, where can people find you?
Well, with me, you can find me on Turkana.com. That is Tercona, Turkana.com. That's where all the comics are, except for the Kickstarter, of course, because that's brand new. You can also find the Taming of April on there. I put it on there because it's a lot easier just to put it on one site. But you can also find the Taming of April on Amazon.com as well. As for my voice acting stuff, you can go to frankjamesbailey.com. You can go there and check out my demos and check out all the stuff. But if you want to follow me on any other social media platform, you can just Google Frank James Bailey. I'm very easy to find. But I made it purposely that way. So seriously, if you go to Google and put in Frank James Bailey, you'll find me. So that's the easiest way. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, I'm on TikTok. I'm everywhere.
So what do I type? What do I type into Google?
FrankJamesBailey.com or Turkana, doesn't matter.
Yeah, nice.
Nice.
Same with me. I pretty easy to find. It's just Todd Rayner art. Came up with that like 25 years ago. Ridiculous. Like when emails were a thing, I'm like, I better snatch this up. So it's everything is Todd Rayner art. My Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have a Etsy shop that has some art prints, original art. I do sketch cards for tops and stuff like that. So, you'll see stuff like that pop up. My books are on Etsy. I also have a new merch shop I launched, and that's Dark Space Studios. So, you can search Dark Space Studios LLC, search my name, Ice Pick. It's everywhere.
Nice. Cool.
Okay.
So thanks for everyone who's watching, and now we're gonna Wayne's World over to Nova Nation.
Wayne's World.